Okay, on this video I'm going to do an example solving an equation with rational expressions that is not a proportion. This is not a proportion. 2 over x squared minus 9 equals 1 over x squared plus 1 over x squared minus 9. It's not a proportion because on the right hand side there's two fractions and it's supposed to be a fraction equal to a fraction. So now there's two ways of solving this. I could do what I just did on the last page and clear all the fractions, which means multiply by the LCD on both sides of the equation. Or I could put the two things on the right together and then I could actually cross multiply, which is the same thing. So I'm just going to look for the common denominator. Now, x squared minus 9 is a difference of two squares, so that factors is x minus 3 times x plus 3, but none of the other, but there's one other term with a denominator that's the same, x squared minus 9, and the third one doesn't have an x minus 3 or an x plus 3, so there's no real reason to factor it because it's not going to make, I'm not going to be able to make my common denominator smaller by factoring it. So it turns out on this one to be the product of x squared minus 9, the quantity, times x squared. Notice I did not include the x squared minus 9 twice, because when I multiply this through, it's going to get rid of both of the x squared minus 9s. Okay, and I didn't really want to factor it because later I have to multiply out the numerators again anyway, and so I'd be factoring it and multiplying it back out again. If you're not following that, try it and you'll see what I mean. So I just took each one of my terms and multiplied it by the LCD. I can do that because it's an equation. If it was just an expression, like just the left side, and there's no equation or anything, and I was just supposed to simplify this, I couldn't do this, right? Yet that's when you have to multiply top and bottom to do anything to it, right? Or add and subtract a number. But that wouldn't help here anyway. Okay, so I multiplied the numerators by, and of course this is just the distributive property over here. You're multiplying the whole right side by the LCD, and then you just distribute it to each term. The first term and the second term, and of course it goes on top. Then you reduce and you lose all your denominators, which was the whole point. That's why it's called clearing the fractions, because now you have no fractions. Multiply everything out, which is not too hard on this one. There's not much left to multiply out, right? And then you want to combine all the x's squares together, and you find that they all cancel because you have a 2x squared on both sides of the equation. And on the left, remember, you're subtracting the 2x squared from both sides is really what you're doing here. So you end up with a 0 on the left. You get 0 equals minus 9. And what does that tell you? Well, some people will just, oh, I need to know what x is, so they'll put x equals minus 9. Don't do that. That's not what it says. It doesn't say anything about x at all. You lost your x when you solved the problem. So whether this has a solution has nothing to do with the value of x. It has to do with whether or not 0 equals minus 9 or negative 9. 0 is not negative 9, so this is a false statement, which means there's no solution. So the reason this comes about, in case you were wondering, we set these two things equal to each other and we say, well, if these two were equal, what would x have to be? And you come down to here and you get something, right, that doesn't make any sense. And that means that these two couldn't have been equal in the first place. See, so we're conditionally setting them equal to each other to try to find a solution. But when we get to this, that tells us if there was a solution, then 0 would have to be equal to negative 9. And it's not, so there is no solution, okay? So when you get this thing down here and it's false, and there's no x's, and it's false, then there's no solution. Now, if you got 0 equals 0 or negative 9 equals negative 9, that's something that's always true. And that's one of those where your solution would be x is any real number, or what people usually call all real numbers. That's 0 equals 0, something that's always true. Because that says the left side always equals the right side, no matter what x is, because there's no x in the equation. Okay? But this one, no solution.